Employee SEO Ji-hoon finishes his work, announcing he's on his way home, but his colleague suddenly stops him, calling him by his title, Assistant Manager Seo Ji-hoon. He reminds him of the company dinner everyone was looking forward to, then grabs him tightly by the neck to prevent him from leaving, disapproving of the idea of his absence and insisting the atmosphere wouldn't be complete without him. Meanwhile, two of their colleagues were whispering that Ji-hoon would skip the dinner and spend the night alone. Ji-hoon thinks to himself resentfully that these events are only for people who enjoy them, and they can manage without him. He recalls the image of his desk piled high with mountains of paperwork and realizes that if the workload weren't so massive, things would be different. They had all been stuck working overtime day after day, and today was the first time he could leave on time, having reached his breaking point. Suddenly, his colleague, Secretary Lee Ji-yoon, places a hand on his shoulder and tells him she understands his situation, acknowledging that they've all been working to the point of exhaustion and that she knows how hard it is. Ji-hoon feels relieved for a moment, thinking she's the only one who truly gets him. But contrary to his expectations, Ji-hoon shouts enthusiastically and suggests that since they're all in agreement, they should celebrate by drinking together tonight, which shocks and bewilders Ji-hoon, leading him to believe that the work pressure has driven everyone mad. Ji-hoon wonders desperately how he ended up in a workplace that drives its employees crazy with constant work. All he ever wanted from his government job was to achieve a work-life balance, to work and rest in moderation. As he's walking away, he spots a mysterious person wearing a hoodie and a face mask, and he recognizes him immediately. It's the petitioner he met earlier that day. Ji-hoon feels a sense of danger. The person seemed unstable, and he needs to get away from him quickly. But the man stops him and asks if he's the employee he met that morning. Ji-hoon remembers how Ji-yoon told this man that his requests couldn't be met because they were orders from above. Back in the present, the man asks Ji-hoon why he's ignoring him, and Ji-hoon tries to explain that he's just following procedures, and Ji-yoon intervenes, asking the man to come back the next day because working hours are over. At that, the man loses his temper, shouting furiously that he's being ignored, and then violently attacks Ji-hoon, blaming him for all his problems. Ji-hoon falls to the ground, drenched in his own blood, while his attacker stands over him, yelling that this is no way to live a life. As Ji-hoon loses consciousness, he wonders what that even means, and in his final moments, all he can think about is his simple dream, to work in moderation and rest in moderation. Suddenly, Ji-hoon wakes up to find himself unharmed, checking his body in astonishment. He realizes it's been a long time since he was last stabbed, but he now finds himself in the body of another young man with long hair and traditional clothes, now known as Ilmok, formerly Seo Ji-hoon. Another man calls out to him, asking for water, and Ilmok responds immediately, calling him Uncle Tae-hyun. A full year has passed since the stabbing incident that took his life, and he was given a second chance at life by being transported to this martial arts world. Luckily, thanks to the memories of Ilmok, the boy whose body he now inhabits, he didn't have much trouble adapting to his new reality. Ilmok found that his motto from his past life, work in moderation and rest in moderation, fit perfectly with this peaceful life. He thought he could live out the rest of his days in this peace and comfort, but he soon discovered that this idea wouldn't last long. Ilmok feels that the peaceful future he aspired to has turned to ash. Suddenly, a huge fire engulfs the inn where he works, and Ilmok rushes to try and put out the flames with buckets of water. He wonders angrily why the fire broke out in their inn of all places, but decides the priority now is to get everyone out safely. He spots his uncle Tae-hyun trapped under a burning wooden beam and rushes towards him to pull him out, but he freezes in his tracks, shocked by what he sees inside, where an old man with long white hair stands next to the corpse of the innkeeper. The old man calmly tells him that the reason for his actions was that the noodles served to him were disgustingly bad. Ilmok condemns this trivial reason, but the old man insists the food was that bad, and burning the place down was just an added bonus. The old man turns to Ilmok, remarking that his talent is being wasted waiting tables, and offers him the chance to become his disciple, threatening him with death if he refuses. At that moment, memories of his death in his past life flood back to Ilmok, and how he was killed by a madman who claimed to be ignored while he was just following procedures. He now sees the same madness in this old man who kills and burns down an entire building over a bad bowl of noodles. Ilmok seethes with anger and yells at the old man to cut the crap, questioning if he thinks waving a knife around gives him the right to do whatever he wants. He continues shouting that he will never listen to a lunatic like him and demands they give him back the balanced life he dreamed of. Just then, another man with an eye patch appears and strikes Ilmok with a swift blow, knocking him unconscious. As he lies on the ground, Ilmok thinks that at least this time he managed to say everything on his mind, unlike in his past life, and wonders again if his request to work and rest in moderation is really that difficult to demand. The old man orders for Ilmok to be taken with them. Ilmok suddenly awakens to find himself inside a moving carriage, and panics when he sees the old man in front of him, calmly telling him that he's awake. Ilmok is amazed to still be alive, as he was sure the man would kill him after he yelled in his face. The old man surprises him with an apology, admitting that he was lying, and that the one truly behind the destruction of the inn is the Murim Alliance. The old man explains that the alliance framed him as he was passing through the area, as a pretext to strengthen their authority. Ilmak doubts the man's story but can't completely dismiss it. From his experience working at the inn, he realized that all martial artists, whether from righteous or evil sects, were nothing more than a bunch of thugs. Ilmak asks the man why he lied in the first place, and he replies that he wanted to test his character. The old man adds that Ilmak's spirit greatly impressed him because he chose death over becoming the disciple of an enemy. The old man expresses his satisfaction, asserting that his judgment of people has never been wrong, but Ilmak corrects this in his mind, convinced the man is actually senile. The old man explains that he had no other choice. The official story would be that an enemy of the people had passed through, but no one would believe that someone like that would leave a simple errand boy alive. They would surely kill him and blame him for the entire incident. The man tells him this leaves him with only two options: either become his disciple and join him, or die at the hands of the Murim Alliance. Realizing the gravity of his situation, Ilmak suddenly changes his tone and respectfully asks the man his name, and the old man notices this sudden shift. The old man introduces himself as Hayukrion Ilhui. Ilmak doesn't recognize the name, so the old man explains that his title is more famous. In the Central Plains, he is known as the Heavenly Demon. Ilmak immediately recalls the meaning of this title from martial arts novels. The Heavenly Demon is a symbol of overwhelming martial power and the ruler of the demonic sect. Although the sect has different names, the title ultimately means a sect leader. But the only difference is that their power is incredibly immense. Ilmak thinks that if this were a modern-day cult, he would immediately refuse to join due to its association with criminal activities. But since it isn't, it might not be so bad. The Heavenly Demon interrupts his thoughts, asking him about the work-life balance he was shouting about, which embarrasses Ilmak. They reach their destination, and the Heavenly Demon asks for his name. Ilmak replies that he has no family name, just Ilmak. The Heavenly Demon welcomes him to the sect, where many followers are lined up, kneeling to greet them. The followers greet their master, the Heavenly Demon, and ask him for salvation, and Ilmak is filled with a sense of awe. The scene is much grander than he had imagined, and he thinks about what it must feel like to be the leader of a religious cult, wondering if others will look at him differently now. The Heavenly Demon takes him to a palace called Bonga Majon, and tells him it will be his if he accepts being his disciple, asking him to stay there until he makes his decision. He promises to personally investigate who sent the assassins to the inn, as he understands Ilmak must be in great pain over the death of his uncle, who was like a father to him, and he swears on his name as the Heavenly Demon that he will help him in this matter, whether he becomes his disciple or not. Moved by this promise, Ilmak prostrates himself before him, thanking him and calling him master. The Heavenly Demon is surprised by the speed of his decision, but Ilmak confirms that he has already made up his mind. He has no other options anyway and will do his best. The Heavenly Demon calls his decision wise, and tells him he will appoint an attendant to serve and guard him, through whom Ilmak will learn the ways of the divine Heavenly Demon sect, and Ilmak thanks him once again. Ilmak sees a girl approaching and assumes she is the attendant the Heavenly Demon mentioned. He thinks to himself that things are moving at a crazy pace, as expected of a religious cult. Ilmak is stunned by her beauty, thinking she looks like a famous star, and the idea of a girl this beautiful taking care of his daily needs flusters him. But he quickly scolds himself, reminding himself that if he considers his past life, he's technically in his 30s. As he's thinking that getting involved with her would be, the girl bows before him, introduces herself as Jin Haeon, and tells him she will be in his service from now on. Ilmak immediately retracts his previous thoughts, deciding that maybe he should reconsider the matter. He justifies this change of heart by reasoning that his current body is only 15 years old, so the age gap between them isn't that significant. Haeon interrupts his thoughts and apologizes for having to say this at their first meeting, but she tells him he must start preparing to enroll in the Madagwan. Ilmak wonders what the Madagwan is, and she explains that it is the sect's top academy where distinguished members enroll at the age of 16, and that all high-ranking officials of the sect have graduated from it. She adds that since he is the Heavenly Demon's disciple, he must graduate at the top of his class so as not to bring shame upon his master. Ilmak realizes this task will not be easy at all. Haeon acknowledges that time is short, but reassures him not to worry. The atmosphere suddenly shifts, becoming more serious and strict, and Haeon declares that she will make him the strongest. She immediately begins a grueling training regimen, ordering him to chant the sect's slogans like Advent of the Heavenly Demon while doing push-ups, and yells at him that his voice is too low and to do it again. She continues to push him relentlessly, shouting for him to straighten his arms. Ilmak completely collapses from exhaustion, and she screams at him again to get up. Ilmak gasps that he can't go on. Haeon asks him sharply if someone threatened him with a sword to force him into this, reminding him that this is the divine sect he chose himself. Ilmak screams internally that he didn't choose this, and that she's the one threatening him now. She grabs him and tells him he must endure with absolute perseverance and determination. He looks shocked, but agrees. then collapses on her shoulder, thinking that everyone in this demonic sect is crazy. While he is lying down, Hyeon thinks to herself that the extent of his training today has far exceeded the limits of ordinary humans, especially for someone who has never learned martial arts before, which is proof that his body is blessed by the heavens. She is amazed at the heavenly demon's ability to recognize such a remarkable talent, and confirms that this is the reason why one cannot help but venerate him. Then she enthusiastically chants the sect's slogans. Ilmak wakes up at night in his room, wondering where he is. The last thing he remembers is training with Jin Haeyeon. He realizes that she is in the room, massaging his back with internal energy. He jumps away in a state of panic and shock. She calmly tells him that she was treating him with a healing technique while he was asleep, adding that the treatment is not yet finished and asks him to lie down again to complete it. Ilmak accuses Jin Haeyeon of being a harsh drill sergeant, and believes that her healing technique is just a way to heal him quickly so she can return him to the grueling training again. This treatment brings back painful memories of his military training in his past life, and he feels that that experience was enough suffering for him. He screams that he cannot live like this, and demands at least one break every half season, a term from the gaming world meaning about an hour. He asserts that the most important value in his life is work-life balance, and that he will defend his rest time no matter what it takes. Hyeon flatly rejects his request, explaining that he is 15 years old, with only 1 year left before he enrolls in the Madagwon, so there is no time for complacency. Ilmak worries and wonders if she will continue to be this cruel, and asks her what if he dies from exhaustion. She calmly replies that he is not so weak as to collapse from this amount of training, and adds that if he were to die, she would gladly follow him to death and continue to serve him even as a spirit. Ilmak is terrified by this extreme loyalty, and calls her obsessed, asking her to stop talking about dying with him and portraying it as loyalty. He feels stressed but realizes there is no other way out. He decides that there is no point in arguing and changes his strategy, announcing that if he has to live like this, he would rather give everything up. She asks him what he means by that, and he provocatively replies that he will tarnish his master's reputation and then die. Hyeon's face changes and she asks him if he will regret saying this. Ilmak confidently replies that he will not, adding that his master may suffer from the stigma of having a useless disciple, but that is none of his business. She asks him if he thinks she will stand idly by and watch that happen. Ilmak challenges her by asking if she will try to kill him. She immediately attacks him and punches him in the chest, telling him that she will cut off any bud that could bring shame to the heavenly demon, and that she doesn't care if others call her an apostate, as this is a life she was prepared to give up herself anyway. Ilmak smiles sarcastically and points out that if the master kills him, it means the master himself is the one who called him an apostate. Hyeon stops her attack, shocked by his logic. Ilmak thinks to himself that being bold was the right solution. He realizes that his only strength lies in being the disciple of the heavenly demon, and he had to push Hyeon to the limit to use this point to his advantage. He believes that this fanatic has completely taken the bait and is now confused about her master's decision. After putting her in this predicament, Ilmak clarifies that he never said he wouldn't train. He tells her that he has only 2 demands. First, he wants a break every half a shijin, 1 hour, during training. Second, he wants a guarantee of 3.5 shijin, 7 hours, of sleep. Hyeon asks Ilmak if he is really satisfied with these simple demands, and he hesitantly confirms that he is. Ilmak adds that he will train hard if he gets what he wants, as he also does not want to bring shame to his master. Hyeon agrees to his terms, but warns him that he must keep his promise to train hard, then orders him to get back on the ground to continue the treatment and finish the session. Ilmak internally regrets his harshness in negotiating, wondering if he should have been less strict. The next day, it is time for martial arts training with the heavenly demon himself. The heavenly demon observes Ilmak training hard until he collapses, and comments with admiration on his diligence. Hyeon gives the credit to Ilmak's amazing concentration, adding that at this rate, he will have no problem reaching the advanced level of external arts. The exhausted Ilmak thinks to himself, of course, as he sees it as natural to reach this level after a year of such grueling training, and that the real problem would have been if he had remained weak. He realizes that the breaks he negotiated are what have kept him going so far. Hyeon walks beside him and puts her arm around him, saying that everything is fine. The heavenly demon announces that from today, Ilmak will begin learning the demonic arts with him. Ilmak thinks about the meaning of this term, and the heavenly demon explains that the word demon in their sect does not carry a negative meaning, but is the essence of humanity and a power to protect the innocent and defeat the wicked. Ilmak deduces that the demonic arts are probably just a name for the sect's special martial arts. However, due to the nature of the place, he decides not to accept anything blindly. He boldly asks his master if there are any drawbacks to the demonic arts. The heavenly demon laughs at the idea, asserting that they only have advantages, the most important of which is that they allow for rapid progress. Then he adds hesitantly that there might be some side effects. He explains that the risk of key deviation is high, but he believes that Ilmak is capable of overcoming it. Ilmak seethes in secret, cursing the sect leader for not mentioning this serious matter from the beginning. Ilmak cautiously asks for more details about the types of martial arts and their side effects. The heavenly demon agrees, saying that he was going to explain it anyway, and asks him to listen carefully and then decide. He begins with the explosive Mara sword technique, a destructive and powerful art capable of blowing up mountain peaks, and its side effect is problems with controlling anger. The second art is the manual demonic arts, an ice art that can freeze an entire area, and its side effect is hypersexuality. The third art is the mad soul sword technique, an endlessly variable sword art, and its side effect is auditory and visual hallucinations. As the list goes on, Ilmak covers his face in despair, wondering if he is choosing a martial art or a mental illness. Ilmak asks his master in panic if he himself has mastered all these martial arts with their flaws, and the heavenly demon answers with another question, wondering what if he had. Ilmak is completely shocked, unable to believe this is real, and thinks to himself that the heavenly demon is not just a sect leader, but a walking psychiatric ward. The heavenly demon reassures him that there is no need to worry, as it is possible to overcome the side effects of the demonic arts. He explains that the stages of the demonic arts are divided into 3 main levels. The beginner stage is called Ipma, and the stage where the side effects reach their peak is called Gyokma, and when one is able to completely get rid of the side effects, they reach the final stage called Talma. Ilmak asks with concern what happens if someone is unable to reach the Talma stage in their entire life. The heavenly demon places his hand on his shoulder and tells him that this is the reason he chose him. He reminds him of the test he gave him and assures him that thanks to his upright nature, he will definitely be able to reach Talma. Ilmak screams internally in frustration as he wants to know what will happen if he fails to reach it. The heavenly demon ignores his question and asks him to make his decision now and choose the demonic art he will train in. After thinking, Ilmak announces that he wishes to learn the merciless soul-seizing sword. It is a sword style known for its endless series of continuous movements, and was so named because it is said to steal the opponent's soul, and its side effect is obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Ilmak chose this art thinking that an obsession with symmetry would at least be something manageable, and that the pursuit of perfection might enhance his chances of survival, but he feels that things will never go as he expects. The heavenly demon tells him that they will start by learning some basic movements and that he will demonstrate them slowly first, and Ilmak enthusiastically agrees. He explains the first move, the flying soul-seizing blade, and clarifies that it is related to the motion of drawing the sword to block an opponent's attack. He orders him to take a step back with his right foot, draw the sword in the same path as the enemy's attack, and then block the strike while preparing for the next move. The heavenly demon asks him to imitate him. Ilmak thinks that the explanation sounds complicated, but in the end, it's just drawing a sword, wondering how difficult it could be. But when he tries, the sword gets stuck in its scabbard. The heavenly demon corrects him, explaining that it's not just about the hand holding the sword, but one must also pay attention to the angle of the blade and the hand holding the scabbard. He guides his hands, and Ilmak succeeds in drawing the sword, earning his master's approval. His master tells him that he will add some adjustments, and they will continue training. Ilmak continues to practice, feeling satisfied, thinking that perhaps because of his young age, he is learning everything quickly. The heavenly demon tells Ilmak that he will swing his sword slowly, and orders him to block the strike using the flying soul-seizing blade technique while drawing his sword. Despite the slow movement, the pressure was intense, but Ilmak successfully blocks the attack with skill. His master praises him and encourages him to continue. Ilmak is surprised at himself. He blocked the attack naturally without consciously using the stance he had practiced, and begins to wonder if he is a genius. After the grueling training session ends, the heavenly demon tells him that this is enough for the basics of the technique and that he has done very well. Ilmak thanks him, and looks at his body, amazed at his new abilities. As his master's final strikes were so fast that he could barely follow them with his eyes, yet he managed to block them all without any mistake. The heavenly demon announces that the next step is to teach him the method of cultivating internal energy. Since Ilmak started his training at a late age, his master will personally help him guide his energy. His master places his hands on his body, explaining that he will guide his internal power into Ilmak's energy pathways, according to the merciless soul-seizing sword style, and warns him to follow the flow of energy with close attention. Ilmak feels a strange and exciting sensation he has never experienced before, as the energy begins to move inside his body through different energy points. He notices that his master's internal power is gentle, yet its presence is strong and clear, and thanks to this guidance he was able to memorize the flow of energy and the locations of all the pathways, and succeeded in forming a small energy core the size of a bean. His master congratulates him on entering the Ipma stage, and urges him to continue striving until he reaches the Talma stage. In appreciation of his good progress, the heavenly demon invites him to dinner that night with his older brothers in the sect, as this is the perfect time for introductions. Ilmak agrees to purify himself first and then meet him later, and his master tells him that he will be waiting for him. Ilmak sighs, as he is not enthusiastic about another group dinner. He thinks that these older brothers are ultimately his rivals for the position of Heavenly Demon, while all he wants is to live in peace and comfort. Ilmok asks Jin Hyeon which demonic art she learned, and she replies that it is the manual demonic art. Ilmok remembers the frost that would sometimes form around her and realizes that this is the reason, which she confirms. Ilmok is shocked, as he suddenly remembers that the side effect of the manual demonic art is hypersexuality. Ilmok regrets discovering this now that he has started to get used to things, wondering why she chose this particular art out of all the available ones. While Ilmok is in the bathroom, he is overcome with anxiety as he thinks about the side effect of the martial art that Jin Hyeon masters, which is hypersexuality, and imagines the chaos that could ensue if she loses control of herself. He imagines things could get chaotic, so he dunks his head in the water to banish these thoughts. Hyeon tells him that the side effects of the manual demonic art differ between men and women. Ilmok is surprised and asks her what happens to women then. She explains that for women their rationality becomes sharper and they think more logically than usual. Ilmok finds this side effect very mild compared to the others and asks if there is anything else. She admits that feelings like empathy and compassion weaken in them, and Ilmok is horrified, realizing that this means she could turn into a psychopath. But Hyeon doesn't see this as a flaw, but rather an advantage, because this art was created to punish apostates. Ilmok screams internally that this is literally the definition of a side effect and calls her a fanatic. She apologizes for the confusion she caused, and Ilmok suddenly realizes a terrifying truth and asks her if she really intended to kill him the last time she grabbed his neck, and decides he must stop taking the matter lightly. After getting dressed, he prepares for the important part of the night, which is meeting his older brothers. He remembers what Hyeon told him earlier, that he is the 8th disciple of the Heavenly Demon, but he also knows that half of the disciples have died, either from QI deviation or in battles, leaving only 4 alive, including himself. He realizes that the survival rate is only 50%, but he is determined to survive. He encourages himself with his old name, Seo Ji-hoon, then enters the dining hall and announces his arrival as the youngest disciple, Ilmok. The Heavenly Demon welcomes him and introduces him to the others as the youngest disciple he has taken in his later years. His first older brother, Wee Jinhak, greets him warmly. Ilmok remembers that Jinhak practices the exploding spirit Mara sword technique, whose side effect is uncontrollable anger. He had become an enemy of the people known as the Mad Demon, because he unleashed this anger on corrupt officials. Although he managed to overcome the dangerous Gyokma stage, he never reached the final Talma stage, making him a ticking time bomb about to explode. Ilmok returns the greeting respectfully, while warning himself not to be deceived by his friendly smile and to stay alert. Jinhak pats him firmly on the back. Ilmok feels that the atmosphere isn't too bad and heads towards his third older brother, thinking it might be easier to talk to him since he was about the same age as him before he died. Ilmok bows and introduces himself, but he is surprised by the reaction of his third older brother, Seo Wonpyong, who angrily asks him why he bowed twice, and if he considers him a corpse, because bowing twice is a ritual reserved for the dead. Ilmok remembers that Seo Wonpyong practices the 14 Shadow Arts, a sword style known for its speed and stealth. It turns out that Seo Wonpyong's martial art is a demonic art focused on assassination. Its side effect is paranoia, where he always sees the worst possibilities in every situation. The problem is that Seo Wonpyong is stuck in the complete Gyokma stage, the peak of the side effects, which is why he feels so wronged by Ilmok's greeting. Wonpyong accuses Ilmok of wishing death upon him by bowing twice. He approaches him and asks why he can't deny it if it's not true. Ilmok is at a loss as to how to get out of this predicament, realizing that Wonpyong will interpret anything he says negatively. The older brother, Wee Jinhak, intervenes with a laugh, telling Wonpyong that he's taking his joke too far. He adds that hunger might have made him sensitive and offers him new chopsticks. Wonpyong apologizes in confusion. Ilmok also apologizes, saying it was his fault for not knowing the proper etiquette. Ilmok is surprised by this situation, thinking he believed this place was filled only with madmen, but it seems there is a sane person among them. He thinks this must be his 6th older brother, Jong Ri-chu, and that he might be the one he can rely on the most. But Ri-chu tells him that now is not the time for this, and asks him to greet his older brother, pointing to an empty space. Another man laughs and asks Ri-chu what nonsense he is talking about. The man calls Ri-chu 4th older brother. Ilmok is confused and wonders who he is talking to, as the 4th brother is supposed to have died in battle. Then he suddenly remembers that the demonic art Jong Ri-chu practices is the Mad Soul Sword technique, and its side effect is auditory and visual hallucinations, i.e. schizophrenia. Wee Jinhak laughs loudly and plays along with Ri-chu, saying it seems he misses the 4th brother. Ri-chu apologizes, saying it happened again. The Heavenly Demon comments that his heart warms to see the brothers caring for each other, and Ilmok feels terrified, thinking this is a real nightmare and wondering how this gathering will end. He feels hungry and decides to eat, remembering he couldn't even eat at the last company dinner. But as he tries to eat, the others continue to discuss work matters. which greatly annoys him. Wee Jinhak notices Ilmok's confusion and tells him he will explain everything in advance because he will eventually join them in these matters. Ilmok agrees to listen attentively, thinking to himself with resignation, "Here I go, joining them." Wee Jinhak begins to explain the situation to Ilmok, clarifying that the Heavenly Demon and his close aides conduct periodic inspection tours of the sect's territories. He explains that during the last tour, an unexpected variable, Ilmok, appeared at an inn, which caught the master's interest, and for Ilmok's safety, the master had to return to the headquarters first. For this reason, the master held this work dinner today to listen to the reports of the senior disciples who completed the inspection tours and at the same time to introduce Ilmok to his older brothers. After the explanation, the Heavenly Demon asks Ilmok for his opinion on the discussion so far, as he is interested in knowing his perspective on how the divine sect cares for the common people. Since Ilmok comes from the outside, he wants to hear his fresh perspective and whether he has any ideas for improvement. Ilmok realizes this is a test. He knows that the goal of all his older brothers is to reach the position of Heavenly Demon, and they are willing to fight each other without hesitation for this position. But Ilmok, or Seo-ji-hun, is completely different. He doesn't care about this power struggle. All he wants is to relax and eat as much as possible. He knows that fanatics like Jin Haeon will not let him slack off. Therefore, he decides that from today, he must completely distance himself from their circle of interest by playing the role of the eternal middle manager, someone who doesn't care about the top position and doesn't intend to side with anyone. To succeed, he must appear as someone who is lacking something, not too smart, not too outstanding. He must be like a new employee full of enthusiasm but ignorant, someone who tries hard but doesn't achieve great results. Or in other words, a first-class ambitious failure. And luckily for him, he knows the perfect answer to this question, an answer inspired by the bureaucratic system he suffered from in his past life. Ilmok begins to present his proposal, saying that first, they must establish a clear reporting system and standardized forms. This way, the higher-ups only review the reports, while the lower ranks carry out the orders, relieving the older brothers from the trouble of doing fieldwork themselves. Second, he suggests dividing tasks and specializing them, with officials rotating periodically between different regions and departments. He explains that leaving someone in the same job for a long time increases the risk of corruption, and by changing their duties and regions, they can be prevented from colluding with local powers. He adds that as long as there is a detailed reporting system, handovers will not be a problem, and thus rotating departments will be easy. He concludes that these two measures complement each other, making them the perfect solution. Inwardly, Ilmok wonders if this bureaucratic nonsense makes sense in this world. He knows from his past experience that the division of departments and reporting systems are the starting point for everyone to evade responsibility. Reports pile up, work gets delayed, and the reports that come down become the basis for laying blame. The rotation of departments is also chaotic, as it is rare for a former employee to leave anything for their successor. Wee Jinhak prepares to put this ignorant rookie in his place, and to show him the difference between fantasy and reality, and what happens when enthusiasm is without substance. Ilmok thinks to himself that in order to make his plan of appearing as an ignorant rookie succeed, he is willing to take some hits. But contrary to his expectations, Wee Jinhak pats him on the head and then holds him tightly while laughing, telling the master that the youngest brother is much smarter than he thought. Ilmok stands there, confused by this sudden turn of events. Jinhak praises Ilmok's proposal, pointing out that he took into account the possibility of corruption among the workers and that his proposed system is in line with the sect's principles. Ilmok screams internally that this is not what he meant at all. The Heavenly Demon laughs, noting that Ilmok's focus on the word perfect seems like a side effect of his martial art, which causes obsessive-compulsive disorder. Ilmok denies this in secret again. The third older brother, Seo Wan-pyong, comments that not a single day has passed since Ilmok started training, yet his achievements in martial arts, in addition to his mind, are impressive. Ilmok's frustration grows. The master decides to end the talk about work for now and will call Ilmok later to speak with him privately, announcing that it is time to enjoy the party. Ilmok begs internally for them to stop. Later, Ilmok reflects that the South Korean bureaucratic system, despite its age, is certainly more developed than any system in the world of martial arts. He had discovered that the divine sect had no real system but was just a mess where the Heavenly Demon gave orders and everyone had to carry them out. He realizes his mistake was assuming an organizational structure existed based on the master's authority alone. After dinner, Ilmok tells Jin Haeon that he is going out for a while to digest his food, and she asks him to return before the external martial arts training begins. He thinks to himself that thanks to his successful proposal, his workload has increased even more. He complains that his time is already tight with the recent addition of doctrine studies, and wonders when he is supposed to rest. He walks outside, wishing he could find something to help him relax. He spots a little girl walking in front of him, and thinks the word healing. He reminds himself that he is Seo Ji-hoon in his 30s and should not be affected by just seeing a cute child. He notices that she looks scared and decides that the priority is to calm her down with mature behavior. He approaches her with a wide smile and gently asks her what she is doing here. The girl stammers in her speech, and he realizes that her doll has fallen into the water, so he tells her that she can count on him. The girl points to where the doll is, and Ilmak jumps into the deep water and retrieves it for her. He feels embarrassed for trying to look cool, but the girl thanks him for saving her doll. He asks her why she was playing alone, and she replies that no one at home plays with her. They just order her to train. Ilmak is moved by her words, realizing that her situation is very similar to his own. He introduces himself as Ilmak, and she introduces herself as Sayona. He suggests that they meet again the next day, then changes his mind and suggests that they meet every day at lunchtime so he can play with her daily. Sayona asks Ilmak if his promise to play with her every day is real, and he enthusiastically assures her it is a firm promise. Then they pinky swear to seal their agreement. A few days later during training, Jin Haeyeon notices that Ilmak seems to be in a good mood, and asks him if something pleasant has happened to him recently. Ilmak tries to distract her, claiming his good mood is due to his rapid progress in learning. He boasts that at this rate, he expects to finish his doctrinal studies within half a year. Haeyeon agrees with him, and Ilmak feels guilty for unintentionally lying. He lied because he feels that if Jin Haeyeon finds out about Sayona, she will forbid him from meeting her. This daily meeting is his only time to relax, and he is determined to protect it no matter the cost. The heavenly demon suddenly arrives and tells Ilmak that his rapid progress is good news. They both greet him. The master tells Ilmak that the opinion he presented at the dinner was excellent, but it seemed a bit disconnected from the reality of the sect. Therefore, he assigns him a new mission, to go and see the sect for himself and propose an improvement plan based on what he sees. Ilmak tries to get out of it, saying he is still incomplete and has a lot to learn, but the master replies that although training is important, delaying this practical mission is not wise. The master decides it's best for Ilmak to leave the next day, which frustrates Ilmak. The master adds that Haeyeon will accompany him, so he can train in his spare time and not worry about falling behind, and Ilmak hates this idea more than anything. Later, Ilmak returns to training feeling hopeless, and Haeyeon orders him to learn footwork and the art of lightness quickly because they don't have much time. All Ilmak can think about is that he misses Sayona. Elsewhere, Sayona is training alone and looks sad. A woman approaches her and asks what she is doing. The woman sternly tells her that she is not focused. Sayona apologizes, then continues her training seriously. The woman sighs, looking impressed, and whispers the name, Sayona. Then she tells her it's nothing and orders her to continue training until she returns. The woman walks away, blaming herself for almost breaking protocol. She thinks that this is a crucial time and apologizes to Sayona in her mind, asking her to endure for just a little longer. Sayona is left alone again. The next day, Ilmak prepares to leave with a sullen face, while Haeyeon walks ahead of him carrying the luggage, and he thinks about how he is really leaving the very next day. Ilmak leaves, feeling sorry that he couldn't tell Sayona about his sudden departure, and wishes he knew where her family lived so he could at least send her a message. He apologizes to her in his heart and promises to return soon, asking her to wait for him. He is introduced to his personal guards whom the master assigned to accompany him. The first is Jang Hui, and the second is Guan Muyol. Ilmak greets them. He feels relieved when he realizes the master himself will not be accompanying them, and begins to plan how to pretend to inspect while taking a break. He thinks about buying a gift for Sayona, but is puzzled about what children in a martial arts world might like. But his plans for rest evaporate when Jin Haeyeon stops him from getting into the carriage, telling him that from now on, he will run alongside them. Ilmak doesn't understand what she means, but the carriage suddenly takes off, forcing him to run behind it while screaming at Haeyeon in protest. She calmly tells him that this is also part of the training. She explains that he learned light footwork yesterday, and now he must use it to keep up with the carriage's speed. She continues to instruct him as he runs, reminding him to keep his waist straight and his focus sharp, emphasizing that his posture must not falter no matter how harsh the conditions. She tells him she will only let him rest during breathing exercises. When they reach their destination, Ilmak collapses from exhaustion, wondering what kind of rest this is. The breathing exercises in a shaking carriage were a terrible experience, and he barely managed to calm his raging energy without actually resting. Haeyeon helps him up and tells him they will immediately prepare for purification and blood channel activation exercises. Ilmak thinks for a moment that she has some consideration for him, but she adds that the doctrine studies will begin after 1 Shijin, 2 hours, and orders him to finish preparing his materials by then. Ilmak curses his bad luck. The next day, they wander through the village, and Ilmak finds this more relaxing. He decides he doesn't care about improving the demonic sect, and that any suggestion he makes will mean more work for him. He resolves to play dumb even if a good idea comes to him. Haeyeon asks for his opinion of the place, and he replies that it seems like a nice village. He asks about the nature of the believers' work here, and she explains that they usually suppress thieves and bandits, but since they are close to the headquarters, there are almost no villains. Instead, they help the common people with their daily problems and spread the sect's teachings. After the tour, Haeyeon tells him they will continue tomorrow according to the schedule. She asks him sarcastically, shouldn't they tour all of Xinjiang to find a way to improve? She points out that the next village is more than 1,000 li away, which means more running. Ilmak suddenly stops her, announcing that he has a great idea. Ilmak asks Hyon to bring him a brush, ink, and paper, assuring her that his idea will definitely work. Ilmak thinks that he has some ideas, but the problem is that he cannot fully implement them under the sect's conditions. However, he sees that having an incomplete plan is better than nothing at all, and as he writes, he worries that his plan is not quite perfect. He also fears that his plan will create new problems, so he decides to use it as a basic standard and figure out the rest later. The two guards, Zhang Hui and Guan Muyol, watch him from a distance. Zhang Hui is impressed by Ilmak's ability to write all this based on just half a day's observation, and wonders if the rumors about his brilliant strategy are true. Hyon asks him if he means the reporting system Ilmak previously proposed, and Zhang Hui replies that he thought it was just a rumor, but now he cannot doubt his abilities. Guan Muyol remains skeptical, saying that having many opinions doesn't mean they are good, and they must be truly beneficial to the sect. Jin Haeyeon joins them and agrees with Muyol, but adds that the young master Ilmak is different. Zhang Hui asks her if she believes in him, and she replies with a slight smile that when it comes to resting, the young master is unbeatable. Haeyeon presents the completed plan to the guards, and they admire it, describing it as excellent. But Ilmak is still not satisfied, believing the plan lacks one vital element to be perfect. Suddenly he realizes that this obsession with perfection might be a side effect of his martial art. He quickly dismisses the idea, convincing himself that the reason is that the main targets of his new plan are children and they require careful handling. He also secretly admits that it reminds him of Siona. As Ilmak is thinking about Siona, Haeyeon suddenly stops him and orders him not to move. She looks out the door and sees a group of bandits on horseback approaching. She notices that they are very organized and deduces that they are most likely deserting soldiers. The guards exchange signals, planning to eliminate all of them, deciding to observe quietly for the time being. Haeyeon notices a determined look on Ilmak's face. One of the bandits declares they will kill the men and sell the women. The bandit leader objects, saying they only wanted to take their wealth as a last resort. The leader orders his men not to harm anyone, but insists he cannot let his brothers starve, and orders the caravan to hand over everything in exchange for their lives. The guard Guan Muyol jumps out to attack them, while the bandit leader laments their situation, wishing they could have lived a decent life. Ilmak yells from the carriage, telling Muyol not to kill him. Before it's too late, Muyol changes the path of his sword just before cutting the leader's neck. The other bandits get angry, calling the sect members scum, and vow to kill them all. Haeyeon wonders why Ilmak hesitated to let them kill the bandits. They are just thieves who can be easily defeated. Ilmak calmly tells her to be quiet and watch. The guards quickly defeat the bandits, and they all fall to the ground unconscious. Ilmak declares that these men will be the final touch to his plan. Later that night, the bandit leader, Hanggun, wakes up to find himself tied up and his body immobilized. Ilmak appears before him and asks if he's awake. He calls him by his name, and Hanggun wonders how he knew it. Ilmak tells him it wasn't hard to find out, as his men confessed everything easily after being tempted with food and beautiful women. Ilmak reveals that he knows Hanggun's tragic story, how a younger officer surpassed him due to family connections, how he was framed for embezzlement when he tried to advise him as an elder, and how he barely escaped execution with his men, only to end up in the territory of the divine sect. Ilmak explains that even if he tried to join the sect, he would be rejected for being a former soldier. Then he surprises him with a direct offer, asking him what he thinks about serving the divine sect. He introduces himself as a disciple of the heavenly demon and tells Hanggun that he is the perfect person for a certain task he has in mind. He promises him that if he obeys, he will erase his crimes and help him officially join the sect. He reminds him that his men are risking their lives for him, and asks if he wouldn't prefer for them to work together with honor. Hanggun asks Ilmak the reason for this offer, what he sees in him, and if he isn't afraid he will betray him. Jin Haeyeon intervenes and answers for him, saying that to know a man, you must look at his followers. She adds that although his men may be foolish, she doubts they would follow someone truly evil. Hanggun feels grateful to his men once again. Ilmak thinks to himself that with this, all the pieces of his plan are in place. Later, Ilmak presents his written plan to the heavenly demon. He explains that his idea is not grand, but simply to establish a school. He explains that although the sect's efforts have reduced the number of bandits, this has led to fewer opportunities for children to feel the sect's grace and protection, resulting in a weakening of their faith. His school aims to fix that. Children will learn to read, write, and the sect's doctrine naturally, expanding the sect's influence and creating a system for nurturing new believers. The heavenly demon describes the plan as brilliant, and Ilmak thinks sarcastically that this flawless plan is the result of his martial arts side effect, but he denies it in his mind. The master asks him about a specific part of the report, wondering if he intends to teach something other than the doctrine, and Ilmak confirms it, revealing the final feature of his plan. Martial arts will be taught in the school, spread as a form of daily exercise. The heavenly demon asks Ilmak if he is suggesting teaching the demonic arts to children. The master explains that although the side effects of the demonic arts can be overcome, Teaching them to those without upright hearts will only increase unnecessary suffering. Ilmak replies that what the children will learn is not the demonic arts, but basic and external martial arts. The heavenly demon deduces that Ilmak intends to select the most outstanding among these children to teach them the demonic arts later, which Ilmak confirms. Ilmak adds that even if they don't end up learning the demonic arts, learning the basics will make a big difference in their lives, and these children will become a source of strength for the sect. Ilmak reveals the final part of his plan. The deserting soldiers they recruited on their way here will help with this matter. They have learned military martial arts, which may be slower but are free of side effects. And since they were seeking to join the sect anyway, using them will make the preparation of basic martial arts go smoothly. He adds that they are multi-skilled individuals who can be utilized as academy managers in areas lacking a qualified person. The heavenly demon praises Ilmak for his hard work and significant contributions, and as a reward, he grants him the honor of naming this new academy as he wishes. He asks him if he has a name in mind. Ilmak thinks that the idea for the academy is inspired by something from the modern world, a place that teaches martial arts and physical exercises while providing character education, which reminds him of Taekwondo. Therefore, he suggests naming it Taeguk Dojo. After this achievement, Ilmak collapses on his bed from exhaustion. Jin Haeyeon tells him she will postpone today's studies, but suggests he at least take a bath before sleeping. Ilmak refuses, saying he just wants to get through the day, especially since the master himself has praised his hard work. Haeyeon reluctantly agrees, and Ilmak feels relieved that the work trip is finally over, and that he will finally be able to see Siona tomorrow. After Haeyeon leaves, as he thinks about meeting Siona, he wonders if she is upset with him for disappearing without warning, and hopes she will forgive him quickly because he bought her a gift. Suddenly, someone appears in his room late at night, and Ilmak asks him why he is here. Ilmak realizes with dread that it is his third older brother, Seo Wonpyong. Wonpyong tells him he wanted to meet him without his guard's knowledge, whom Ilmak considers watchdogs, not guards. Wonpyong praises Ilmak, saying that the master was very proud of him, and that his ideas like the reporting system and the Taeguk Dojo were methods he could never have imagined himself. Ilmak wonders to himself if Wonpyong has come because he feels jealous of him. Wonpyong continues to wonder about the difference between him and Ilmak, and as he speaks, he sees the gift Ilmak bought for Siona. Wonpyong realizes that Ilmak is fundamentally different from him. He seems to be on good terms with a young lady, and it's natural that no one would dislike a smart man like him. He compares himself to Ilmak, describing himself as old, worn out, and completely incompetent, and concludes that someone like him should die, or rather, should kill everyone. Ilmak confronts the paranoid fit that has overcome Seo Wonpyong, grabbing him and shouting that what he's saying about himself isn't true, and that the person for whom he holds the second highest respect should not speak this way. Wonpyong is surprised and hesitantly asks if he truly respects him second most. Ilmak assures him that their master is first in his respect, and Wonpyong comes right after him. Ilmak continues to flatter him, claiming to be a flawed person with much to learn, and that he sees Wonpyong as a role model and an example to follow. He then points to the gift he's holding, explaining it's for a little girl he knows, and claims that she herself says that men like Wonpyong are very popular, while secretly apologizing to Siona for using her name. Wonpyong seems moved but is still skeptical, and asks Ilmak if he is mocking him. Ilmak firmly denies it and strengthens his lie by claiming the master said something similar as well. Ilmak explains that although it may seem otherwise, the master is always scolding him, and every time he tells him that he must learn from his third older brother. He adds that the master boasted a lot about the 14 shadow strikes that Wonpyong masters, describing them as the greatest assassination arts in the world, and that Wonpyong always puts his mind at ease. Wonpyong's expression suddenly darkens and becomes frightening, and he asks in an icy tone if this is really true. Ilmak panics, realizing he may have said something wrong, as Wonpyong suddenly draws his sword. Wonpyong declares that this is the first strike of the 14 shadow strikes, and orders Ilmak to contemplate his sword and dedicate himself to honing his swordsmanship skills. He then sheathes his sword, tells Ilmak that he enjoyed his time with him, and vows to visit him often from now on before leaving Ilmak trembling with fear. After he leaves, Ilmak thinks that he might need to change his underwear from sheer terror. The next day, Ilmak tells Haeyeon that he is going out to digest his meal, while in reality, he is excited to finally meet Siona and plans to shower her with affection to make up for the lack of sleep he suffered due to Wonpyong's visit. But Haeyeon stops him, telling him that since he couldn't do his doctrinal studies yesterday, she intends to use this opportunity now to make up for what he missed. Ilmak screams internally, wondering why she is doing this to him, but Haeyeon coldly replies that his progress is more important than hers. She asks him if there is any other reason preventing him from studying now, so he makes up an excuse that he was worried about feeling sleepy after eating, then resigns himself to the situation and secretly apologizes to Siona. Meanwhile, Siona waits for him at their usual meeting place. During his studies, Ilmak feels extremely drowsy. He admits he's tired but hides the real reason, which was Wonpyong's terrifying visit the previous night. He asks to go out for some fresh air, and Haeyeon tells him she will wait for him. Ilmok felt exhausted and wondered if his third older brother would visit him every night. He accepts the flattery as a way to stay alive, but he wishes Wonpyong would at least respect his sleeping hours. He realizes it's wrong to expect such consideration from members of the sect, and all he wishes for is to take a peaceful nap with Siona. Suddenly he sees Siona in front of him in the hallway, confused about her presence here, and notices that her hair seems redder than usual. She calls him Ilmok Appa, and he asks her in confusion how she knew his location. He expresses his concern about her being out so late, saying her mother will scold her, but she suddenly grabs him and asks in a dark tone why he abandoned her, reminding him of their promise to play together every day. Ilmok quickly apologizes, trying to explain that there was a real reason for his absence, but she cuts him off, saying he did nothing wrong. She tells him she understands everything because he is the revered disciple of the heavenly demon, then invites him to go with her to her clan where they can eat, sleep, and play together. She teases him, saying she will take full responsibility for him, and he tells her to get a grip. At that moment, Ilmok remembers a truth he had been avoiding, that Siona had also learned the demonic arts and is a true member of the sect. The hallucination suddenly shatters, and Ilmok finds himself lying on the ground in the open in front of Jin Haeyeon, who asks him why he's in such a state. Siona appears and asks Haeyeon who she is. Siona screams in anger and attacks Haeyeon, accusing her of getting between her and her appa. Haeyeon wonders if the girl is possessed by a demonic spirit. Ilmok shouts, telling her not to harm her, explaining that she is just a child under the influence of a dark demon, and asks her to just subdue her. Haeyeon pulls him to safety and asks if he is okay. Ilmok reassures her and asks about Siona. Haeyeon tells him she used a simple demonic technique to temporarily slow her movements and that she will recover soon. But Siona suddenly breaks free and attacks again, injuring Ilmok in the shoulder as he protects Haeyeon. Siona tells him to get out of her way, so she can kill Haeyeon. She asks him jealously if he and Haeyeon are in some kind of special relationship. In a dark moment, Siona thinks that if Ilmok isn't hers, he will abandon her. But this dark thought vanishes as she finds Ilmok suddenly hugging her. He apologizes for disappearing without warning, explaining that his master's mission was urgent, and he didn't have a chance to tell her, especially since their meetings were a secret from everyone. Ilmok continues his apology to Siona, explaining that if he had told her about his trip earlier, she wouldn't have had to worry so much, but he was afraid it would interrupt their time together. He admits he was selfish because he hated the idea of their meetings being interrupted. Haeyeon asks Siona if she hated Ilmok a lot, and Siona denies it, crying. Siona in turn apologizes because Ilmok's shoulder was injured because of her, but he reassures her that it's just a minor injury. Haeyeon suddenly asks Ilmok when he became so close to the heir of the Hyukrion clan, and Ilmok gets confused and asks if she also knows Siona. He is shocked when he hears the clan's name, and Haeyeon explains that this is Hyukrion Siona, the sole granddaughter of the Hyukrion clan. Later, Haeyeon deduces from Ilmok's reaction that he really didn't know about the custom, and Ilmok asks her what custom she is talking about. Suddenly a group of elegant women arrives in the rain, and Haeyeon tells him she will explain later. When Ilmok asks who they are, Haeyeon tells him that the lady in the front is Lady Chonghwa, the mother of Hyukrion Siona. Ilmok notices that her angry face looks exactly like Siona's when she gets angry, and Siona also realizes that her mother must be very angry. Ilmok reassures Siona and tells her he will talk to her mother, asking her to wait. Siona agrees, and Haeyeon asks him what he's going to do, to which he simply replies that he will meet her first. Ilmok and Haeyeon step forward to meet Lady Chonghwa and her attendants. He greets her and introduces himself as the 8th disciple of the heavenly demon, and asks if she is here for Siona. The lady confirms it but says she wants to ask him something first. What is his goal? Ilmok pretends not to understand, and she tells him not to play smart. The lady explains that she knows Siona came here alone to look for him, which means they knew each other before, and since Siona never initiates contact with anyone, it must mean that Ilmok had some motive and has broken the custom. Ilmok is accused of seducing Siona for his own purposes, but he vehemently denies it, insisting that they met by chance and became friends, and that this is the truth whether she believes it or not. He angrily asks about this custom that angers everyone, and the lady asks him if his instructor didn't tell him. Haeyeon apologizes and admits that it is her fault. Ilmok defends her, asserting that she only focused on preparing him for the entrance exam to the Madagwan. Ilmok politely asks the lady to explain it to him, and she agrees, but asks to speak in private as it is difficult to talk in front of Siona. After they are alone, Ilmok asks her directly, what is this custom that cannot be mentioned in front of her? Lady Chonghwa begins to explain the custom, clarifying that the girls of the Hyukrion clan are trained from childhood in a martial art that has a side effect causing an obsessive and extreme nature. For this reason, the custom forbids any contact with the child until she becomes attached to an inanimate object as the target of her obsession. Ilmok asks if this is for fear that Siona might harm others, and the lady replies that if it were that simple, they wouldn't need a custom in the first place. She adds that the world is not that simple, as it is natural for people to get attached to each other, but these attachments do not last because humans get injured, sick, and eventually die. She explains that these risks are greater for those in the divine sect, for if the person they are attached to dies, they completely break down. She reveals that in the past, enemies tried to exploit this weakness to control the Hyukrion family by threatening the person their girls were attached to. Jin Haeon concludes the explanation, confirming that this custom is ultimately to protect Siona, and this is her mother's argument. After she finishes speaking, Lady Chunghwa prepares to leave, saying that goodbyes are unnecessary, but Ilmak stops her, asking if she is done making her excuses. Haeon is shocked and tries to salvage the situation, asking Ilmak to apologize. Ilmak ignores her and repeats his question sharply, accusing the lady of mistreating Siona. He yells at her that she is forcing her daughter to learn a demonic art under the pretext of the custom, and then using the same custom to deny her a mother's love, questioning if she ever gave Siona a choice in the matter. He continues to blame her, asking her if she even knows what Siona truly wants, and if she doesn't see, as her mother, that she is making her sacrifice everything. Lady Chunghwa explodes with anger, asking him what a novice like him knows to spew such nonsense, adding tearfully if he knows the scale of the sacrifice they made to turn their backs on their daughter. Ilmak coldly replies that he does not know, but he knows one thing: this whole farce happened because she lacks faith. The lady is stunned by his accusation, then screams that he knows nothing, and attacks him to kill him. Suddenly her hand stops in midair, as the heavenly demon has arrived and stands before her. The lady immediately kneels and greets the sect leader. The master says he rushed here so that Ilmak wouldn't be late for his training, but instead, he found a scene he had never witnessed before. He looks at Ilmak and tells him he has many questions, but first he wants to know what he meant when he dared to speak of a lack of faith in this divine sect. Meanwhile, Siona is still waiting outside in the rain, facing the heavenly demon's wrath. Ilmak begins to explain his position. He quotes his master's earlier words to him, that all side effects of the demonic arts can be overcome. He then questions the current custom, pointing out that it preemptively assumes that Siona will inevitably fail to overcome the side effects. Before he is misunderstood, he clarifies that he does not mean to accuse the lady of a lack of faith in the sect, but was speaking of faith as a mother, imploring her to believe in her daughter a little more. Ilmak asserts that Siona is only young in age, but she is not foolish or weak, and that she is fully capable of overcoming the side effects of her martial art. Even if her energy deviates, with a little help, she will surely be able to overcome it on her own. He concludes his speech by saying that Lady Chunghwa, as a mother, knows this truth best. The lady is moved by his words and asks him how he can believe in Siona so much. Ilmak replies that the reason is that Siona is a child of the great and proud Hyukrion clan. Siona, who had been listening from a distance, was deeply moved. Her mother sees her and tells her it's time to go, but Siona tries to say something. Her mother coldly asks if she intends to ask to come here again, and Siona firmly replies that she does, vowing to become someone worthy of the Hyukrion clan. She promises to eat all her food and train even harder, all in exchange for being allowed to return. Her mother adds another condition, that she must also study hard, and Siona happily agrees. After they leave, the heavenly demon comments that it seems the child of the Hyukrion clan has already become obsessed with Ilmak. He warns him that although things ended today with a minor injury, these side effects could lead to his death in other circumstances. He asks if he can really handle her. Ilmak confidently replies that Siona will never harm him, and that even if she did, he is prepared to endure everything. The heavenly demon smiles and tells him to do as he sees fit, secretly admiring his disciple's courage. The master thinks that Ilmak not only devised a profound system that he himself hadn't thought of, but also directly confronted the powerful Hyukrion clan. He realizes that if this matter is handled well, the clan will become an absolute ally to Ilmak, which would be valuable even if Ilmak no longer remains his disciple in the future. A few days later, during a break from training, Ilmak thinks with relief that there has been no further friction with the Hyukrion clan. Siona comes running to him and throws herself into his arms happily. Ilmak realizes that no one can find fault with a matter in which the heavenly demon personally mediated. He remembers the moment of his master's late arrival and his intense fear at that time, while Siona asks him if he has been studying well. He pats her on the head, convinced that confronting them that day was the right decision. Ilmak thinks that child abuse crosses all lines, even in the demonic sect, and that he needs these quiet moments with Siona so as not to lose his mind. Siona asks him what he did that day, and Ilmak remembers the gift he brought for her. He tells her he went on a business trip and saw something he thought would look beautiful on her, so he bought it for her. He asks her if she wants to try it on, and Siona is deeply moved, hugging the box and thinking that this is the first gift she has ever received from her brother. When Ilmak asks her why she is hesitating, she tells him it might get dirty, so she will wait to wear it on an important day. Jin Haeon watches the scene from a distance, thinking that Siona seems to be controlling her side effects relatively stably. Suddenly Haeon notices two people approaching, and Ilmak recognizes them. They are his older brothers. Wee Jinhak, and Seo Wanpyeong. Hyeon greets them, while Ilmok wonders why Jinhak is here, as he is used to Wanpyeong's nightly visits. Wanpyeong explains that he is the one who accompanied Jinhak here, and Jinhak explains that he is facing a personnel problem in the Red Dragon Corps and came to ask for Ilmok's help after rumors of his shrewdness spread. He asks him to offer his wisdom to his foolish older brother. Ilmok fears that if he refuses his request, Jinhak's anger will erupt, so he cautiously asks about the nature of the problem. Ilmok decides to listen to him quietly for now, then bows and apologizes, claiming he's afraid he might not know the solution. Jinhak tells him the matter is about choosing the vice captain of the Red Dragon Corps, a difficult decision he wouldn't have asked for help with if it were easy. Ilmok feels relieved that Jinhak didn't get angry and that his workload hasn't increased, considering his response to be perfect. Jinhak notices Siona's presence and greets her warmly, mentioning he heard she visits Ilmok often, then sees the gift box in her hand. Jinhak notices the box won't open and offers to help. Ilmok and Siona try to stop him, insisting it can be opened easily, but Jinhak uses his excessive strength and shatters the wooden box. Siona screams in horror and anger, asking him how he dares to break the gift her brother gave her. Jinhak says coldly, "My bad," and Siona attacks him, screaming that she will kill him, but Ilmok covers her mouth to stop her. Ilmok tries to calm her down, pointing out that the contents of the box are still intact. Siona cries as she holds the gift, and Jinhak comments that their bond is deeper than he thought. Ilmok asks his brothers to give them some privacy to calm Siona down. Jinhak apologizes for his foolish act and leaves, promising to come back again. After Wanpyeong leaves, the guards feel relieved and ask Ilmok to take care of himself, while Ilmok secretly thinks that he hopes Wanpyeong never returns. Ilmok notices that Wee Jinhak's temper doesn't flare up as easily as he thought, and thinks that maybe he can relax a little when dealing with him. As Ilmok consoles Siona, she suddenly says, "The great young master is a fool." Jinhak, who is leaving, freezes, and his face transforms into a mask of rage. Ilmok panics and tries to silence Siona, worried that Jinhak might have heard her, but it's too late. Jinhak turns around and asks in a threatening tone what she just said. Both Hyeon and Ilmok panic and tell Siona to apologize quickly. Seo Wanpyeong tells Ilmok to cover Siona's mouth, but Siona repeats loudly that the great young master is a fool who can't even open a box. Jinhak explodes with rage, his eyes glowing red, and Ilmok realizes he is in big trouble. Ilmok is confused, wondering why Jinhak is getting angry now, when he himself had called himself a fool just moments ago. Ilmok prioritizes Siona's safety and yells to Jinhak that he has found a solution to his problem. Jinhak stops for a moment and asks him what solution he's talking about. Ilmok quickly improvises, suggesting promoting the third team leader to the position of vice captain, explaining that his weakness doesn't matter. He tells him that since Jinhak is the captain, his deputy's combat strength is not important, and that the third team leader is the best at handling the work and would be a perfect support for him, secretly hoping this would be enough to calm him down. But the plan backfires, as Jinhak interprets his words as another insult, saying, "So you're saying since I'm a fool, I should promote the smart third team leader?" His anger intensifies, and Ilmok realizes the situation has worsened. Jinhak launches a fierce attack, and Ilmok realizes it's too late to dodge and he must block the blow. He tries to move his body as fast as possible and grips his sword tightly. He succeeds in blocking the attack with the flying soul-seizing sword technique, but is stunned by Jinhak's immense power. He thinks that blocking that strike was a miracle at his current level and screams internally for help from Seo Wanpyeong to deal with the crazed Jinhak. At the last moment, Wanpyeong appears behind Jinhak and launches a surprise attack from behind, but the other easily avoids it, then punches him hard. But Seo Wanpyeong endures the punch and delivers a series of strikes that hit Jinhak directly. Jinhak is thrown back, his face filled with rage and madness. Amidst Ilmok's shock at this insanity, Hyeon rushes to Ilmok and asks if he's okay. He reassures her and asks about Siona, and she tells him she hit her pressure points and knocked her unconscious, and he praises her for it. Hyeon sees the ongoing fight and declares that she will join them as well. As the fight between the brothers intensifies, Jin Haeyeon asks Ilmok to take the opportunity and escape. Ilmok feels frustrated, wondering how he can escape when they are in desperate need of help. He realizes the skill gap between his brothers is too great, and if he escapes alone, he might survive, but Haeyeon would be in mortal danger. He concludes that the only way for everyone to survive is for him to intervene. Meanwhile, Wee Jinhak continues his violent assault, and Seo Wanpyeong falls, and Haeyeon rushed quickly towards Jinhak in a desperate attempt to stop him before he went too far. But Jinhak grabbed her clothes with a powerful grip, lifted her high into the air, and then slammed her forcefully onto the ground, causing a violent impact. In a desperate attempt to change the course of the battle, Ilmok screams at Jinhak, calling him a fool. He asks him sarcastically if his head is just for decoration, and if he doesn't understand that he is the one being talked about. He succeeds in provoking him, and Jinhak turns to him and asks if he wants to fight, then attacks him. Ilmok declares to himself, "The deadly game of chase begins now." Hyeon screams for Ilmok to run. Wonpyong tries to stop her, telling her to rest. While declaring that he will protect the youngest disciple, Ilmok explains that waiting for help would mean everyone's death, and the only way for them to survive is to bring Jinhak to the others. The fierce battle continues, as Jinhak charges towards Ilmok with a ferocious attack, but the latter dodges with incredible agility, miraculously avoiding the blow. Jinhak rushes forward, seizing the opportunity, and brings down a second powerful strike on Ilmok. But at the last moment, Wonpyong suddenly appears and intercepts Jinhak's attack, blocking the blow. And Wonpyong asks Ilmok about his plan. Ilmok screams one word, "Run!" and then takes off running. Hyeon realizes his plan. People have heard the commotion and are starting to arrive. This will ease the burden on Wonpyong, but it won't be enough to calm Jinhak without the master's presence. Therefore, Ilmok had to draw attention to himself. He keeps running while shouting insults at Jinhak, asking him why he is attacking the wrong person. He succeeds in getting his full attention. Ilmok thinks that as long as the others will hinder anyone trying to approach him, the plan will succeed. Jinhak unleashes a devastating attack towards Ilmok. At the peak of Jinhak's rage, he throws his sword in a devastating attack, surprising Ilmok, as this move was not part of his plan. A massive explosion occurs, and Wonpyong screams Ilmok's name in worry. The heavenly demon arrives at that moment and orders everyone to fall back, while the master steps forward, praising their efforts and declaring he will finish it himself. Jinhak remains enraged and screams threats at Ilmok. The heavenly demon coldly orders him to cut it out. Jinhak struggles to resist his master's command, and the master asks if he is going to make him repeat himself. Jinhak screams in pain as he fights his master's control, then finally collapses and prostrates himself, greeting the master of all demons with complete submission. Ilmok falls to the ground in exhaustion and relief. As the guards help restrain Jinhak, Ilmok looks at his master with admiration, realizing he truly is a heavenly demon. Jinhak's rampage is quickly quelled, and fortunately, there were no serious injuries, so his punishment was confinement in the closed hall. Since Siona was the cause of the incident, the Hyukrion clan did not object to this lenient punishment. But the only unfortunate thing was that both Ilmok and Hyeon were injured in the fight. Despite her injury, Hyeon insists on starting their studies. Ilmok protests, wondering how they can study in their condition. Hyeon asks him if he would prefer external martial arts training instead, and he shouts that that's not what he meant. She explains to him that training while injured could leave permanent effects, so he has to endure studying for now. The heavenly demon visits them, and they greet him respectfully. He asks them to remain seated. Ilmok reassures his master of his condition, thanks to the skill of the doctors. The master expresses his relief and decides to reward Ilmok for his quick thinking that minimized the damage, and for his past achievements. Ilmok wonders about the reward, and the master gives him the sect's precious elixir, Bokmadan. Then he adds that he will also grant him more time for training, and Ilmok realizes this means more hard work. Hyeon cries from being so moved, considering the master's grace to be truly heavenly, while Ilmok sighs in despair at her excessive enthusiasm. The master tells Ilmok he has one more thing to tell him. His first older brother, Jinhak, wants to see him. He offers to allow a private meeting as an exception. Ilmok hesitates to see him, but realizes he will have to face him eventually. Confused, Ilmok asks only one question. Are the doors of the closed hall sturdy?